How's everyone doing this morning? Good? Okay. Awesome. It's so great to be here at the Product Marketing Summit, and I just want to reiterate that after the pandemic, it's just awesome to get together in person and do this, and I really hope today during breaks I can meet a lot of you and we can network together. My name is Andrea Bailiff-Gush. I am the head of product marketing at a startup called AppOmni. What we do is we essentially solve the problem of securing customer data and company data that's stored in SaaS apps to prevent data breaches. So a little bit about me, we'll get this out of the way before we dive into the content. I have 15 years of product marketing experience, so I feel really lucky to have been involved in product marketing kind of at the genesis of the whole discipline and seeing it grow and evolve. I've taken a slightly different approach to product marketing. A lot of times product marketers will just focus on a specific industry and maybe move from company to company. I actually purposely seek out new industries because I think that's just the fun of being a product marketer and learning and growing about the different pain points, the products, the personas, et cetera. So I'm currently in cybersecurity. I've actually been a product marketer here at Morningstar in financial services. I've also done product marketing for e-commerce, media and communications. So again, that's just kind of the fun of being a product marketer. So that's the approach I've taken. I live in Logan Square with my husband and my cat, Linus. And I think we all have superpowers as product marketers. And my superpower is cross-functional collaboration, which is what we're going to focus on today. So I'd love to see a show of hands. How many product marketers in this room are involved in pricing decisions? Raise your hand. Okay, so about half. Okay, that's more than I would have thought. So what we're going to talk about today is pricing in general. How do you price a product? How do you package a product? Where should it fall within the go-to-market process? We're also going to talk about how to make it a strategic revenue driver in your organization, and then most importantly, as product marketers and marketers, how we can all have a seat at that table and be involved in those decisions, because it's actually very important. Okay, this is just a kind of an overview of the agenda. So first, we're going to talk about pricing and packaging those different models, the importance of having a seat at the table. How in the world do you form a pricing team? What is a pricing team and why that's important to have in an organization? And again, making pricing that strategic revenue driver. Okay, so what in the world is pricing and packaging? So this is gonna look extremely familiar. This is the go-to-market process. We should all know this by heart as product marketers. So product develops a new product. They come to us as product marketers and we start working on persona research, messaging. We start thinking about like the timing of when it's gonna be developed. Then it's all systems go on the launch. We're thinking about how do we size the launch, the timing, the launch event, et cetera. Then we do pre-launch marketing. We might want to seed the market, so the market starts associating your product, your brand with that, whatever you're launching, whatever problem you're solving. Then it's that big moment, that lightning strike moment where it's a product launch. And then you want to sustain the launch. You don't want that excitement and enthusiasm to dip. So we all should be really familiar with this. So where does pricing fall? I think naturally we would think, oh, pricing probably falls near the end when we're working with sales, we're getting ready for enablement sessions, we're thinking about Salesforce and how to put it into Salesforce as a SKU. Actually, it falls right here, kind of in that first phase. So it's a really strategic and important part of go-to-market. And that's because you have to think about your use cases for the product. You have to think about your target audience. You have to think about the problem that you're solving. And that all goes into how you price and package a product. Okay, and there's lots of different ways to do pricing. And I should have prefaced with the fact that this is all going to be more B2B focused when I'm sharing today. But there's different pricing models. There's pricing based on value. So that's typically when you sit down with a prospect or a customer and you do willingness to pay surveys. There's pricing based on competition, so doing that competitive analysis to see what they will charge for a product and then deciding if you're going to go higher or lower. There's cost plus, so making sure that you're covering your margin, that you have that healthy margin. So looking at your cost of the product and then adding a percentage on top of that. And then there's dynamic, and that's the whole idea of you want your customer relationship with a customer to grow. So considering having that maybe that cost or that level of value increase over time, but having that entry point. There's also different ways to package, and packaging and plans I think are tied one-on-one. So you want to tell a story, you want to solve a problem, you want to show value. So those are different ways that you can package. And then with plans, Free trial, that's probably the one that we're most familiar with, especially in B2B. So that's the whole idea of giving access to your product for a short amount of time, just enough for them to see the value. And then of course, getting them into a paid plan. There's a tiered approach, so that's the good, better, best, the basic, advanced, professional approach. And that whole idea around that is to think about what features and functionality can you fit into each plan that will solve a problem, or maybe be what's right for a certain segment, like SMB, mid-market, enterprise. And then there's the approach of pricing based on per license, per user, per app, per organization, et cetera. So there's all sorts of different strategies and models that are involved in pricing and packaging. So it's all about finding the one that's right for your customer base and your company. Okay, so why in the world does pricing matter? So there's a couple of reasons why it matters. The first is it influences how your business is going to be sustained, how you're going to keep the lights on, how you're going to continue to delight and make your customers happy. Secondly, it reflects how competitive you are in the market. I can't tell you how many times I talk to sales, and we've won deals not because we were the lowest. Actually, coming in at a higher price was better because it showed how high of a quality product that we had. So I think it really set perception, especially competitively in the market. And then lastly, it proves how we can meet customer expectations. So it's that whole idea of customer growth and the life cycle in mind. Okay, so that's pricing models, packaging, all of that. So why in the world do we, as product marketers, need to be part of those decisions? So I'm going to walk you through. So in my experience, usually pricing is led by product and sales. So product has their roadmap. They're deciding what they're going to add in terms of functionality and features to the product. And then they get together with sales and they say, let's come together and think about this price. Can you validate it? Can you talk to reps? Can you talk to customers? Can you talk to prospects? Then they'll come to us as marketers and they'll say, okay, this is going to be the pricing, make sure it's part of the go-to-market, et cetera. I think that's an absolute mess. Imagine being a customer and you're hearing about the positioning and the messaging from marketers, and then if the pricing isn't aligned with that, imagine how jarring of an experience it would be. So that's why it's so important for marketers that we're involved in those decisions. We're considering the target market, we're considering competitors, we're considering the positioning, messaging, et cetera. So this is the reality. This is where we all want to get within our organizations and our teams, some pricing that perfectly aligns with messaging. Okay, so I put together, this is just a model that I've used, but this is what I would call the pricing dream team. So it really is these 4 perspectives, and I intentionally made them horizontal because I believe that everyone has the same amount of perspective and value to bring to these pricing decisions. So let's start with product management, kind of the usual suspect that you'd expect in pricing decisions. So they define the product roadmap. So they're the one who's going to initiate these pricing decisions for a new feature. They are going to bring that market feedback. So products, the most likely to be on customer and sales calls. So they're going to be hearing what customers and prospects are saying. And then packaging, they're going to have a really good idea of how do I package all these features and functionalities together so they're solving a problem. Then you have sales and customer success, also another role that you'd expect to be part of these decisions. So they're going to validate with customers and prospects and reps as well. They're also thinking of pricing levers. So what a pricing lever is it's essentially a strategy or a technique that you can arm reps with. So if they're really close to closing a deal, it's a way to essentially get it over the finish line. So it's, I can throw in more seats. I can give you a 20% discount for the first 6 months. I can give you access to this new feature that's on the roadmap. So that's a pricing lever. So you really want to consider that in your pricing models. Obviously, feedback, and then last but not least, enablement. So they have to roll this out to reps, to customers, and to prospects. Okay, now the second half is the roles that you might not expect to be involved in pricing decisions. The next one is finance. So finance plays a huge role because they have to make sure we can cover our costs as a business. So they're really thinking about that when it comes to pricing. And then they're responsible for measuring and modeling gross profit and ARR. So just making sure that how you're pricing a product helps your company reach those goals. And then last but not least, you have product marketers. So this is what we would bring to the table. Naming, so making sure that whatever you name the package, name the feature, is consistent across your portfolio. It has that theme. Competitive analysis, how many people here have a tool that they use for competitive analysis? Clue or Crayon or, yeah, great. So competitive analysis is really important because you want to have a finger on the pulse when it comes to competitors in the market and what they're charging. You definitely don't want to launch a product and then a competitor comes out with a similar product and it's free or much cheaper. Win-loss analysis, so we do this quarterly. So essentially we sit down with sales and just do an analysis on new deals. We sit down with customer success and do an analysis on renewals and upsells. And we just want to understand what was the win reason or the loss reason? Was it pricing? So you want to incorporate that as well. And finally, willingness to pay. This is so important. This is essentially sitting down with customers and prospects and presenting a feature, maybe doing a demo, and just asking, what are you willing to pay for this product, if anything at all? So this is the pricing dream team. This is more or less the model that I've been using. Okay, so how do you form a pricing team? How do you get people who are so busy, they're committed to so many deadlines and projects to get involved in pricing? Okay, so you're in Chicago, so I have to use a basketball / kind of NBA reference. Whoops, excuse me. So essentially what you're gonna do is you are gonna have to be strategic and kind of use your people skills with this one. So what I've done, typically when I join a company, sorry about the microphone, I try to get to know people. I do the same approach when new people join the company, so I'm big on one-on-ones. So essentially just taking time to introduce yourself, get to know people, find out what they're responsible for, and then share what you plan on doing. And just, I think forming those relationships and doing that outreach initially will go a long way. Another tactic you can use is just thinking about how your company is structured. So I'm at a startup right now, so we have a small number of product managers. I'm the only PMM currently. We've got 2 finance people, so it's pretty easy to kind of decide who's going to be, you're going to recruit for the pricing team. Normally it's the person who's the most experienced. A lot of times it's also been directive, so sometimes I was in one situation where a manager just asked me to be part of it, so that could also happen as well. But that's how you kind of want to think about things. If you're at a large company, you may end up with multiple pricing teams. So you may have a pricing team per segment, a pricing team per solution. It just depends. Okay, so this is just examples of pricing projects that I've worked on, just to give you a taste. Sorry, it's so small. But up on the left, this was a pricing recommendation. So essentially, the product manager said, here's a new product. Let's think about how we want to price it. So we came up with an option A and option B. We did win-loss analysis. So again, looking at all of your opportunities over a quarter, was the win reason pricing, and then looking at your current pricing model and how you can adapt it. Getting feedback from the reps on levers. So this bar graph at the bottom just shows trends in terms of which pricing lever led to the most deals and which didn't work as well. And the one all the way in the far right is just package feedback from the team, and specifically this was a new pricing model we were considering rolling out, and essentially we were targeting SMBs and mid-markets at a lesser price point, and what we were offering just wasn't kind of solving their pain point. Okay, so objectives. So you've got your team, you did an awesome job recruiting, everyone's bought in. So what are your objectives? What value are you going to provide to the organization? So there's a few different things. Of course, you're supporting profitability for the business. You're trying to affect the bottom line. But there's a few things that you're responsible for. The first is every time there's a new feature or brand new solution, it has to come through your team. And you have to be involved in pricing. Another thing you need to do is look at those opportunities for upsells and expansion with current accounts. And then lastly, you are going to be continuing to evaluate pricing and packaging. It's dynamic, it's never static. Okay, so you create a process, you need to roll it out internally. You need people to understand you're the pricing team, you play a strategic role in the company. This is who you are, you have to introduce yourself. So what I've done is, if you have an all-company meeting regularly, if you have a all-hands meeting regularly, to see if you can get on the agenda for those meetings. Come together as a pricing team, introduce yourself, talk about how you can help kind of each team solve their problems and integrate. and make sure everyone knows that all pricing decisions have to come through you as a team so you can validate, and then have those ongoing feedback loops between yourself as a pricing team and then other teams as well. This next one's really important. It's going to feel like extra work and not necessary, but it's so important to get that buy-in. So you have to recruit executive sponsors, and typically who that's going to be is whoever your boss is. So I typically report to the CMO. In my experience, so that has been kind of my executive sponsor. So if you meet weekly as a pricing team, you're going to want to meet monthly with executive sponsors, and you want to present your pricing recommendations and get kind of buy-in and agreement from them. You're also going to want to show any analysis on pricing and packaging decisions and your recommendations as well. So this is really important because then you can tie it to the company business objectives as well. So that's how you roll it out internally. Okay, so how do you make this strategic? How do you make this something that really moves the needle when it comes to your business? Okay, so you are going to take your pricing strategy to market. We talked about this already, where pricing is really key when it comes to the go-to-market process, and it should be that first part of that first phase. Make sure you lead with data. So you're going to want to do those willingness to pay surveys. You're going to want to go through Gong, which was mentioned in the last session. Just hear what people are saying about what are their problems or their pain points, what do they need, et cetera. And then think about how you're going to package it. Again, think about those models we talked about at the beginning where you're going to package based on value, package based on story, et cetera. And then you can determine your price point. The next one is pretty important, so just reevaluate your pricing regularly. Again, it's not static. You're going to want to look at, after what I've done in the past is after launching a product, I'll create a dashboard, and well, I won't create it. I'll work with RevOps who creates it, but they'll create a dashboard in Salesforce, and then I can just look at how many deals was that feature, part of that win, how much revenue is it contributing to, et cetera. So it's like a great thing you can show your boss, et cetera. Also, create a roadmap. So you've got the product roadmap. You may have a marketing roadmap in terms of campaigns and themes for your team. Create a pricing roadmap. So not only does it align with the product roadmap and you know what features and functionality you need to price for, but maybe you want to decide at certain points in the year you want to reevaluate your current packaging and plan structure. Or maybe there's a spiff that the sales team's running and you want to make sure that pricing is part of that. The last part is so important. So there's so many other teams that are affected by pricing decisions. So you're going to want to consider them and consider the amount of time it's going to take for them to implement any pricing decisions. So typically that's RevOps and enablement. So with RevOps, if it's a new feature, they have to create a new SKU in Salesforce. And so you're going to want to make sure you give them all the information up front. You're part of their queue, whatever kind of list of responsibilities that they have. Contracts are really important. So if you are changing a package, changing a plan, launching something brand new that you think customers would be so excited to have, consider customers who are coming up to a renewal. Consider maybe an opportunity that's in that last sales stage, and whatever, if you're going to make a drastic change to your packaging or plan structure, how it's going to be affected by that. So just give some consideration to contracts. Your website, so if you have price in your website, that has to be updated. And then training, make sure that your reps understand the new pricing model or the new feature and how it's priced, et cetera. So just some considerations. Okay, final thought. So if you remember anything from the past 20 minutes that I've covered, these are the most important things. So again, utilizing that perspective of the dream team, so product, marketing, sales, and finance. Consider pricing from a product exception. It should not be one of the last things that you do before your launch event. It should be one of those first steps when it's added to the product roadmap. Be aware of what competitors are charging. Again, you do not want to be undercut. You do not want to launch a product and then have a competitor come to the market with the same thing and it's free. Use value as a driver of pricing. So willingness to pay surveys take work, but they're so important to do because you don't know what someone's willing to pay for a product unless you actually talk to them. Cover your costs, really important. So you may want to give your customers all the functionality for free, but you're running a business, you have to cover your costs. Gain the support of executive sponsors and leadership team and get their buy-in. And then last but not least, consider what the pricing and packaging and how it affects other teams, specifically RevOps and enablement. And then, it's a living, breathing thing, pricing, so you want to continue to evaluate and optimize. Last but not least, this is my other little takeaway, just some recommended resources. So if you love to read, there's a really good book called Loved. It's all about product marketing and tech, and it's written by an investor with Cost to Noah Ventures. That's a great book. There's 2 podcasts that I love. There's one called Women in Product Marketing. I think men would also find it valuable, but that's a great weekly podcast through Spotify and all the different tools. There's also Product Marketing Life, which is through the Product Marketing Alliance. That's a great podcast. Courses, if your company gives you a stipend, like an annual stipend to use for education, I highly recommend using it for one of these 2 programs. So Product Marketing Alliance has fundamentals. If you are early on in your product marketing career, that's a great course to do. You'll learn even the fundamentals of pricing, everything. There's also leadership, so if you're a little further along in your career, that's a great one as well. And then I'm older, so I went through pragmatic marketing. That one's been around forever. And essentially, that's a great course because there's a module for go-to-market, there's a module for messaging, there's a module for pricing, and there's also a whole course for product managers. So it's really kind of awesome to kind of take it at the same time as the product managers, and then you all have that kind of learning and those models together. So that's it. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for listening to pricing.
That was really great.
Yeah.
I love the resources too. Those are really good ones.
Good.
Been through a lot of those.
Good.
So, do we have any questions from the audience to start? Nothing. Well, here we go on Slido. We got plenty here.
Oh my goodness.
So I know. So any tips for getting competitive pricing in an industry where no one has it on their site?
Oh my goodness, it's tough, isn't it? Especially in B2B where you typically won't have it on your site. So what we do at Omni, because we are B2B, is we rely on 2 sources. The one are just friendlies in the industry. So if someone has left a competitor, we'll typically be able to get the pricing that way. Another way is through sales calls. So sometimes a prospect or a customer, they'll tell you. They'll share that information with you, and then we have a whole competitive channel in Slack, and it's just like dumped in there right away, and we gobble that up and throw it into Clue on a battle card. So it takes time. It's not as easy as getting some other competitive information, but there's ways that you can sneakily grab that information from some inside sources.
Yeah, and sometimes like G2 and other areas, so you can
Yes.
find it publicly available.
Third-party review sites. Yep.
So do you have any examples of how you've shifted your org's way of thinking about what value gets priced?
Oh, that's really, really tough. Yeah, I think the best way to do that is to make sure that there's that ongoing feedback loop between not only product and sales, because they're going to be on calls with customers, but also marketing as well. We record gong calls. I know it's been talked about at the summit. That's a great way to get insight into what someone's willing to pay for a product, and that of course comes back to marketing, and we can obviously make it part of the value-based approach. So I think just having those feedback loops between the teams that are talking to the prospects and the customers and the team that is messaging. Another great way is through your willingness to pay surveys, if that's something that you do.
Yeah,
Do that from
it's
there
an
as well.
interesting one. Okay, so why do PMMs need to be involved in pricing decisions rather than just inform?
Yeah.
Product and sales carry P&L. Should PMMs, if they want, they want to have a say?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely should be involved. And again, that's because you want to make sure that it matches how you're presenting your brand and messaging to prospects. You also want to make sure that it's in line with your portfolio. Naming is a huge part of it, so you want to make sure that it's descriptive, adds value. So there's all these different ways that PMM can add a lot of value when it comes to pricing decisions. It shouldn't just be product and sales.
I just chime in on that too. I've also been part of PMM teams where pricing analysis falls in that team. So when you look at elasticity and really starting to look at how much value you can price that offering for, and sometimes it doesn't come out of product or sales. That comes out of, hey, we got a new feature, we think we should launch it, and sales should say, yeah, I think I can probably get a little more for this.
Yeah.
And you're leaving some money on the table there. So there's an analytical side too. Okay, what's the best way to communicate new prices to customers?
Ooh, that's really tough, isn't it? So if you have a big pricing shift, let's say to your plans, and it's going to affect current customers, what we've typically done is at the point of renewal. So we won't present new pricing and packaging to kind of all customers at once, especially if they're kind of in their first quarter of being a customer. So we typically wrap that up into the renewal. That seems to be like a less jarring point in the customer life cycle to bring up that conversation, which sometimes can be hard because you're asking for them to pay more money. So it's typically when we've done it.
All right, another one here. Product packaging based on value versus story. Product packaging based on value versus story or solving pain. Can you explain the differences?
Oh, yeah, that's a great one. So the based on value, I think, is really tied to those willingness to pay surveys. So thinking about, you're going through and doing the demo, presenting the product, going through the benefits, and then asking them what they're willing to pay. So I think that really is the value. Again, unless you're talking to customers, you're just kind of guessing what they're willing to pay. Story, I think, has a lot to do with how you package it, especially if you look at your plans. You may have, again, that good, better, best approach. So if you have a basic plan and you've packaged up all of your functionality, that story that you're trying to tell may be, oh, okay, well, we want to start promoting our product to startups and SMBs. So maybe this is the story we're trying to tell is, in our case for AppOmni, we just want to help you cover your compliance needs. When an auditor comes, to your company, we just want to make sure that you are securing all of your log files in our specific example. So I think that's the storytelling approach. And the last one is solving pain. So when it comes to solving pain, that's when you're really going to take more of like a persona-based approach. So you're thinking about specific groups within a company who are using your product and what pain they're going to be solving. And that's a great way to think about how to price and then also how to package. So I think those are the three. They're very similar and related, but I think they also look at maybe packaging more, plans more, the price point more.
Here's a good actionable one, as we were talking about actions earlier. How do you conduct a willingness to pay survey, and who are you actually surveying?
Those are tough. So willingness to pay, the first step is just to figure out who you can talk to, who's willing to talk to you. So in my experience, we've typically relied on our friendlies. So it could be a customer who's already involved in a beta. They already had that. They're already providing feedback to the company. They're already testing features. That's the group that you want to start with, bless you, when it comes to willingness to pay surveys. And then once you kind of have your group, then you are going to actually want to spend some time and sit down with them. So you can do it in person, you can do it over Zoom, but typically spend about an hour with them, and you're going to want to have an SE, you're going to have like someone from the product team involved, and they can actually demo the product. And then you're going to want to have, I have a template, I probably should have shared it, 4 or 5 questions, just kind of going through like more or less like, what did you think of the product? Do you think it's going to solve your pain? And then that last question is are you willing to pay for it? And if yes, at what price? So that's how I've done willingness to pay surveys. They can be a little tedious, but again, there's nothing better than having that direct feedback from the market.
Do you often find that they're willing to pay more?
Usually they want it for free. Yeah, that's usually what it is, yeah.
Just curious.
Yeah.
All right, product naming is hard. Where do you start? A workshop, brainstorm, or pitching a bunch of ideas?
Oh my goodness, that is fun. I think it is hard and it's a lot of fun too. So where do you start? So the first thing is just getting an understanding of what you are naming. What is the feature? What problem does it solve? How does it work? And then you have to think about how it's going to fall in your product portfolio. Then you look at competitors, alternatives, how are they kind of naming it? It really has to fall into your naming structure for your portfolio. So if you take a descriptive approach, which a lot of us do in B2B, making sure that whatever you name your product, you don't have to have a description attached to it. You kind of just understand what it does from the name. If you take a more abstract approach, which some companies use, this making sure that you take that same approach to the naming, and then you're going to want to get some validation, right? So you can incorporate that into those beta groups who are already providing feedback to your company. You also want to sit down with sales, sit down with product to make sure everyone's kind of bought in. But that's how you do naming. It's a very collaborative, it's a lot of fun, and there's nothing better than having that be launched as part of the new product, and then customers and prospects understand right away more or less what it does. So it's great.
Yeah, Andrea, thanks. That's all the time we have.
Great. Thank you so much for having me.